Julia, and today we're going to be painting this fun little Rooster Line painting. It's a very easy, simple painting. This is for absolute beginners. I'm going to walk you through the whole thing step by step. We're going to be learning different techniques like how to create a more textured painterly background, and we'll also be learning lots of different textures that you can use to make something look like feathers. Okay, so the supplies that we're going to need today, we're going to need our reference pictures. So you're going to want to have that printed out. Comes in 2 pieces. Then we have a size 11 by 14 canvas, some graphite paper or something to transfer your image with, some tape, just a regular pen also for your transfer, a palette knife for blending your paint, and then I have a 1/2 inch flat, a size 3 pointed round. This is probably a size 10 Filbert, and a size 0 pointed round.
The paints we're using today are Liquitex Basics, and the colors we are using are Titanium White, Cadmium Yellow Deep, Napthol Crimson, Cobalt Blue, Burnt Sienna, Raw Umber, and Ivory Black.
So once you get your graphite paper taped down, then you're going to put your image. So your image, you're just going to have it facing up, and if you've got 2 pictures and you're trying to put them together, you want to line them up. So I'm going to make sure I know where the left edge of my canvas ends over here. So I'm going to line up the bottom of the picture here. So I've got the bottom of the ground here, and then I'm going to line up this corner over here. And then I'm going to go ahead and tape that down, and you can tape it right to the graphite paper. Now I'm going to line these up so that they match. And you're not going to be able to get it exactly right on probably, but as close as possible will be good. So I'm just going to put a piece of tape right in the middle there. I'm not going to do it over the chicken's face because that's where I'm going to be doing a lot of tracing. I'm going to line these up here. I'll put another piece there. And if you wanted to, you could cut out the image and kind of get it just right. If you cut right along these edges here. But I think I'm probably going to just call that good. That's probably not going to move too much. And any tape will work for this. This just happens to be the tape that I had kind of lying around. Okay. So now we're going to go ahead and transfer the image. So I've got just a regular Bic pen. Anything with a sharp point will work, but if it's too sharp, like some pens have a really sharp point, then what may happen is it may stab through the paper and stab through the graphite. So if that's not what you're going for, then you might want something a little bit more dull. I'm going to start over here on the left and work towards the right. You barely need to press down at all to get it to transfer. So don't feel like you need to press down really hard. And also you're going to be painting over it. So don't feel like you need to get right every last little detail and every little edge, because a lot of it is going to end up being painted over. Okay, so when you're finished, you want to kind of just look things over and see if there's any little spots that you missed or that you want to go over again. You don't really need to do all of the individual feathers because that's just going to put a bunch of graphite onto the canvas that you don't really need. So I would not worry about that. But before you peel off the whole thing, what you want to do is just lift up one corner and see what you're working with. And you can see if you need to go over anything a little bit more or if you're pretty much good to go. And it looks like I'm pretty much good to go. So I am going to go ahead and lift this off. And now I've got my little chickens. So at this point, if you want to, you can go in with a pencil. Use mechanical pencil, but if you have it, a water-soluble Derwent pencil, this is a light wash in HB, will work really well. And you can go in and touch anything up if you want to. Go in and make sure I've got the eyes nice and defined. And the other thing you can do is you can actually take an eraser, and if any of the lines are really, really dark, you can erase it just a little bit. And a kneaded eraser is great for just kind of absorbing some of the graphite there. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is paint in the eyes. I always like to paint eyes first. I think traditionally and classically they would do the eyes very last, but I like to do them first. That way, you know, my canvas is dry and I can rest my hand on it if I need to. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my size 0 pointed brush, dip that in my water, dab it on my paper towel. And I am right-handed, so I'm going to work over here from the left over to the right, so I'm not smearing paint as I go. And for this first little chickadee here, I'm going to mix together a little bit of my burnt sienna, a little bit of yellow, a little bit more yellow. And that's about what I want. And I'm going to go in here, and you can even fill the whole thing in and then just paint the black over the top if you want. And you can go outside the edges as well because we're going to paint over that too. So what you may notice is that one side of the eye may be darker than the other. So I can take a little extra red, a little extra burnt sienna here. And I'm going to make the left side a little bit darker than the other side. And then again, I'm going to go over the pupil one more time. And you might want to go over all of the pupils a couple times because the paint is a little bit translucent. As you work your way down the line, you can go over it. So at this point, that white has started to dry a little bit. So I can go in there with my yellow and burnt sienna. Go over that again. brush in a circle. Now I'm going to keep moving on down the line here. This one's eye is going to be a little bit different, so I'm going to use a little bit of raw umber, burnt sienna, and a little bit of white. And the color is going to go kind of right along the bottom here. And the pupil is kind of resting along the top. This bird looks a little mean. That's our mean chicken. Okay. The last one here. I'm gonna go with that same orangey color. Get a little burnt sienna on the bottom. And you'll see that when we add in the highlight, that's when they're really going to start to pop. So until then, it's kind of understandable that they look a little dull. I'm just taking black and going over them again, making sure we get them nice and bright. And then you can wait for them to dry, or you can kind of get right in there with the highlight. So you could get away actually with putting the highlight anywhere you want, pretty much, and it will look okay. If you want to shoot for the original here, we're going to take our size 0 brush. You want to get quite a bit of white paint on the end there, and you're going to kind of dip little globs. So I'm going to do one little glob here, one little glob here. This one just has teeny tiny little one. Sometimes highlights aren't pure white, but I like to do them pure white anyway, because I think it makes them stand out a little bit more. So I'm basically putting 2 dots on this one, 2 dots on this one, one on the pupil, one on the iris, just one little dot on this one. And then we have, do one little, it's almost like a line along the top and then a little one to the side. This one's gonna have one over to the left here, one kind of in the middle, and a teeny little dot on the right. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is start filling in our background. So you can drop that brush off in your water. The background is where you can really kind of take some creative license to do what you want. I'm gonna start off with my 1/2 inch flat here, dip it in my water, dab it on my paper towel, and I am going to mix up. I'm gonna take some white here. You can use your palette knife as well. There's a little bit of blue in there, cobalt blue. And I'm gonna add just a teeny bit of red. Just a teeny bit of extra blue over here. And the more red you add, the more neutral it's gonna be. So that's kind of up to you how much you wanna add in. And I want kind of a textured background, so I'm gonna do more short brush strokes. If you want it to be really smooth, you can kind of drag your brush back and forth. But I want lots of variations. There'll be just some dark areas, some light areas. I'm going to take a little bit of blue over here. I'm not going to blend these all the way. If you don't blend them all the way, then it's going to give you some nice kind of streaks color, and it's going to make it look more painterly. So if it's all one shade, it's gonna look very, very kind of flat. But if you want more texture, you can add streaks of paint without blending it all the way in. And I'm turning my brush in all different directions, left to right, up and down. If you want kind of a sideways texture, horizontal, you can do all horizontal brush strokes, you can do all vertical, all diagonal, but I'm kind of mixing it up just a little bit. And you can paint your edges as you go. And right now we've been using the flat side of our brush. You can also turn it and use the edge of your brush to get in these little cracks. And don't be afraid to paint over the edges a little bit. You can also use a little bit of water, and that can help you really fill it in, but I wouldn't use too much water. if there's any little areas that are just too tight to get into, you can switch to another brush at the end. Okay, so now you're just going to want to go through and make sure that you hit all the spots in between and look and see if you missed any little areas and see what you think of your background. So I just see one little area in here, and I can easily do it with this brush, but I'm just going to show you. If you needed to, you could switch to the pointed brush. And you may find that easier to get into little nooks and crannies. And if there's any little spots you miss, you can always go back to it later. Okay, so now we're gonna go ahead and do this bottom area. So you can drop off that pointed brush in your water and get back out your flat brush. And you don't need to clean it out. We're just gonna go ahead and mix up a color from down here, and you can even use, I'd leave just a little bit just in case you need it. And if you're trying to keep your paint wet, if you paint a little bit more slowly, you can go ahead and wet your paint. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take some yellow, let's mix that in and see what we get here. I'm gonna take some yellow and a little bit of black. A little bit more blue. And a little bit more red. Trying to get a nice kind of neutral greenish color. And take it onto the canvas and see what you think, because you might want to change it after you get it on there. So I like a little bit of that. They are going to be going off an edge. So I'm going to take the edge of my brush and I'm going to go down about an inch. So it's not quite halfway, it's up a little bit from halfway. And I'm going to use the edge of my brush to go across the canvas. And so I'm going to paint this bottom area a little bit darker. And the top area a little bit lighter. So we'll mix some extra white in there. So I'm going to take a little bit more black. Get a nice kind of gray color here. And that's a little bit too light, so I'm going to take some more black. And you're probably going to want to switch to your pointed brush. It's going to be easier to get in there. I'm just kind of blocking it in. And now this bottom area, I'm going to add some of this over the top. I'm going to do lots of short brush strokes, and you can even, I think I want a lot of texture down here. So I'm going to use my brush as a stamp. First stamp over what we have here and make sure I get it all filled in. And now I'm even going to take a little bit of black. It's more of this green color. This texture down there. Now go ahead and switch to your pointed brush. You could also use your little detail brush if you're more comfortable with that. Now I'm going to get in here and start filling this in. You can see I'm not being too careful really. Now I'm going to take some more white, mix that in here, get a lot of white. And I'm going to do a white line right across the middle. You can probably even use straight white because it's going to blend in. Let's switch brushes here. I'm going to switch back to the 1/2 inch flat. I'm just going to brush over that. You can go over it again if you want. Just making sure you get a nice kind of corner there. Now I'm going to add a little bit of texture to this top area. It's the same thing before, short, quick brush strokes. It's okay if you're covering up a little bit of the feet. You can always get back in there. And up close it may look kind of messy, but it's about the illusion of the painting when you step back. Just don't worry too much about that. Just gonna pick this up here. Use some of this paint here to fill this in. Okay. right, so now it's time to start filling in our little chickens. So you can drop back that brush in your water. And I'm gonna again work from kind of left to right. And let's see, I'm gonna start off doing the red areas and the yellow areas. So I'll do the yellow first. So I'm gonna do some for the beak. So this cadmium yellow deep is really perfect for a beak. I'm going to start off just filling it in with that. So I'll just do a first layer on all these. And now we'll add a little highlight to some of them. So I'm going to use white. So I'm going to add white probably to the tops of most of them. Now I'm going to mix up a little bit of a shadow color. So really, this kind of gray will work good. I'll mix a little bit of raw umber in there. You can rest your pinky on your canvas if you need to. So we're just doing the line down the center of the beak. This one down here you can barely see. And then what you can do is you can take your brush and clean it out. Just leave it a little bit damp. And you can brush over where the yellow and the gray meet if you're trying to blend it in. So I'll probably end up going in with another highlight once this dries a little bit more. Okay, so now I'm gonna go in there with the I'm not going to do a ton of detail. I'm going to be using this pointed round brush here. And I'll start off just going over them with some yellow. And you know, let's mix together yellow and white to make this kind of opaque. So white, some yellow, mix that together. And we're going to re-outline the feet here. Some of them may be kind of hard to see. And they are going to have a little claw at the end of them eventually. So you want to keep in mind with this brush how much pressure you're applying. If you press down really hard, you're going to make a really thick line. So let's say you get to one like this and you completely lost your outline. Don't worry, you can just repaint over it. And just draw what you see. And it doesn't need to be exactly like the picture anyways. Start off making them thinner, and then you can always go in and thicken it up. Okay, so I got them kind of blocked in there. And now I'm going to go in and add a little bit more colors. I'll wipe my brush off on the side here. So on some of them, I'm going to add just a little bit more yellow. Especially to these bottom areas. Now I'm going to mix together a little bit of red, a little bit of that yellow, make a nice orangey color. And I'm going to spin my brush in a circle here, redefine the point. And I'm going to take this along the bottoms. And now we need to start getting some of that kind of scaly texture. And we also need to shade them a little bit. So you're gonna switch to your size 0 pointed round. And the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go in and add a little bit of a shadow under these. So I'm gonna take some black, mixed with a little bit of white or a little bit of a lighter color. And I'm gonna create a shadow. And when I do this shadow, I'm gonna kind of bounce my brush up and down. Especially in the corners is where you need a little shadow there. And I'm going to add shadows especially to the right. And mix in a little water if you need to. I'm going to go along the rights of each of these. And I am going to take my pointed round and just a damp brush with nothing on it. And I'm just going to go in and kind of blend in some of those shadows just a little bit. Even take some of your gray paint. Just to blend it in just a little bit. Now I'm grabbing some pure black just to get a little bit darker in some of these corners. Now we need some of that texture. So there's a couple of ways you could create texture. I'm going to use this pointed brush because it's kind of the shape of the little scales. And I'm going to first do kind of a lighter yellow. So more white than yellow. And you can see if you just kind of press down the side, you'll get a nice little mark there. I'm definitely going to have my brush a little bit damp for this. And so I'm going to do short brush strokes. Oh, and see, this is where I missed like a huge chunk of blue. And that will totally happen. And now I'm going to use this same kind of corner point here, but I'm going to dip the edges of it in some gray. So I've got a damp brush, and just right along the edges I have my gray color. And I'm layering, I'm aiming the point of the brush down, and I'm just kind of layering it. And then for these bottom areas, you're going to have to draw more of kind of rounded lines. So I've got a damp brush. And I'm doing lines that kind of curve in the direction of the legs. So if they're going straight towards you, the lines are going to curve kind of up like a rainbow. And if they're going to the side, they're going to curve a little bit towards the end of the claw or the talon. These are probably called talons. And you want to kind of go till you run out of paint. Keep it kind of messy, not too perfect. And now to just make some of these really stand out, I'm going to clean my brush out, and I'm going to take some thicker paint, yellow, a little bit of white, maybe even a teeny bit of my orange color here. And I'm going to do some brush strokes along the ends that look rounded. So they're bending in the same direction as the lines are. So they're blending those lines in a little bit for one. They're all just also just making it look like it's kind of coming towards you a little bit. Okay, and then the last thing's going to be those little claws. So for the claws, I'm going to take white paint . That one's going to be kind of bending upwards. This one's going to be coming almost kind of straight down. And you're not going to be able to see all of them. And what's fun when you're doing like 5 chickens all in a row is like once you do one, you kind of know how to do the others, and you can quit looking at the pictures and just kind of making it go, making it up as you go. So the one that's going downwards, my brush is starting at the bottom of the claw and going up. Okay, and then if you wanted to add a little shadow under any of them, you could. So your baby brush, black paint, you can even add a shadow kind of around where they start. And you can use gray if you don't want it too dark. So I'm just adding a little teeny rounded line at the tops of each of them to separate them from the rest of the talon. I'm going to show you one other trick. So I just pretty much did them in white, but one thing you could do is kind of load your brush up in white and just one little teeny corner in some black and make sure it sticks to it. And if you painted them like that, they would kind of shade themselves and look kind of 3D as you went along. And they wouldn't be so pure white. So if you just want to try something a little different, you can do that. So I'm going to call it good on those for now. Now I can go in later and add more details, but I think that's good for now. So the next thing I'm going to work on is filling in the red areas. So I'm going to switch to my pointed brush here. And I'm going to start off just going straight red, and then I'm going to shade from there. So again, they don't need to be perfect. You're just trying to kind of get them filled in. When you have a lot of paint, there's like a little too much paint, you can move on to another one to get the bulk of it filled in. And when you start to run out, you can do the areas that are kind of around the eye. We're going to paint feathers over that. But you can get it kind of start to be blocked in. You don't have to paint it in the order that I'm painting it. I'm painting kind of all the chickens and building them up together. Chickens and roosters. But if you want to just paint one at a time, I can see how a lot of people might prefer that. That's just not really what I'm doing. I'm just trying to not clean my brush out as often. This one doesn't have one. Okay, so now I'm going to wipe my brush so I don't have too much paint. And I'm going to go in and put a little bit more of this pink kind of color. It's pink when you don't have too much paint on your brush because you're seeing the white of the canvas, and white and red make pink. Just going in. Kind of filling in around. There's a teeny little pink on this little guy. We'll just give it a little bit. Okay. Now I'm going to start to shade him a little bit. So I can add some fresh red if it's dried. So I want it pretty vibrant red at the top, and then as it goes down, I want it to kind of blend in. So I'll do these two together. So I'm going to take a little bit of, I'll wipe my brush off, and I'm going to take some of this yellow and white. Start off with that, and I'm just going to kind of tap my brush. That's a little too yellow. Take a little bit more white. I'm lightly tapping, and that's just giving me a little bit of texture. And this kind of peachy yellow, red, and white mixed together is actually the perfect color to go around some of these eyes. So we'll add some in around this one. And you want to stamp over it to create the texture, but again, if you keep stamping and stamping, eventually it just blends. And then you're not going to have that variation, so you don't want to stamp over it too much. I just love the look of that kind of peachy color against the red. Go ahead and give your paint a spritz if it's getting kind of dry. very lightly tapping. Just getting some nice texture in there. So I'm going to go ahead and finish these up, these two together, while I'm working on it. So I'm going to clean my brush out now, and now we need kind of a shadow color. So you can take a red. You know, I would mix red with the raw umber, but I just know the raw umber is so translucent. So I'm going to take some red and a little bit of black. I prefer using black because I know that it's not as translucent, and I know that it gives me a nice kind of purple color. So you may want to actually switch to your baby brush for this part because there's not that much shadow. There's just a little bit. Add a little bit along the edge up here. So I'm going along the right edges. And then especially down here, I've got two red areas and one is darker than the other. Add a little shadow in there. And you can use the same kind of stamping technique. I want to blend it in a little bit. And this guy right here, I'm going to add a little bit of a shadow, just barely, to the right edges of those. I'll come in, I get a little shadow piece here. A little shadow along the bottom. Now I'm just going to get back in there with some pure red paint. Stamp over that again, make it just really pop, stand out. And those little chickadees are looking good. Stamp over this a little bit more. Blend that in. Make sure I get it far enough down on the beak. And if you lose any of the peach, you can just go back in there, add a little bit more. And now we're moving on. We're gonna go to our next little chickens. Roosters, technically. So I'm gonna clean my brush out. I'm still gonna use the smaller pointed brush. And I'm gonna actually start off with my shadow color for this guy here. I'm gonna go along the left edges, especially with these back ones. Go along the bottom edge of that there. I'm gonna add kind some dark paint right here, and we'll blend that in a minute. I'm going to drag that down just a little bit, and that's going to give it some dimension. Okay, so now I'm going to get in there with just some straight red. Make sure I've got some nice points at the top. Now I'm going to blend this area here, so I'm going to kind of stamp over that dark, and I'm just going to kind of drag it down. If you lose too much, you can go back and grab some more black and stamp again and just kind of drag it down. And then lastly, I'm going to go in with a nice little peachy color. I'll switch brushes for that. I'm going to get around these eyes here. When I don't have too much paint, I'm going to go in and go over that edge, a little bit over here. This is mainly to get texture. There's not really any other reason for it other than to just get some nice texture in there. All right, I'm ready to move on to the next one here. This one doesn't have really any red, so we've just got one more. And same thing, you can go in with the red. Yeah, I'm going to go in with the black and red first, the shadow. So there's kind of one dark area over here on the left of this one, but then other than that, you can add the shadows on the right side because that's how our lighting is for this one. And now I'm going to go in with straight red. And then I'm going to go in with my peachy color again. And stamp some texture. Okay. So right now I feel like is a good time to go in and just make the shadow on some of the beaks even a little bit darker in some areas. So I'm getting just the teeniest bit of black paint on my brush, and I'm not going to do it to the whole thing. I'm just going to add a teeny little bit of black, maybe at the tips of some of them at the beginning, just so that it's not just one solid gray line. And then we also need to take some actual gray. So it can be just black and white, or it can be any shade of gray really. And we're gonna add a little nostril. I don't know if that's the technical rooster chicken term, but it's the term we're using today. So I've got a little one on this guy. This guy, you can't really see, so just do a little teeny bit. It's probably too dark for that one. This one actually has a red one. Yeah, all these ones look kind of red, so we're gonna take some red paint then. I'm just gonna come in here and do a line dipping down. And we also need to fill in. This guy seems to be missing some paint here. So now, I think we're going to start filling in the feathers, and then we can come in and add any other little details that we want to add a little bit later. Okay, so I'm going to start with this one on the left again here. And now I'm going to go ahead and switch to my Filbert brush. So go ahead and dip that in your water, dab it on your paper towel. And what I suggest doing is just filling your chicken in with one color first, and then we'll add the rest of the colors on the top. So I'm going to do some white and some burnt sienna and a little bit of yellow. Let's mix those together, see what we get. And I can see it goes a little bit lighter up here, so I'm not going to fill in that area. And don't forget, you can use the edge to make thinner brush strokes. You really want to let this be the fun part. It's like you have to be so careful with the eyes and all the small details. With this part, you really want to kind of just let loose and let your brush strokes go crazy. So now I'm going to do yellow and white. Fill in this area up here. And now I'm going to start adding the texture of the feathers. Okay, so got that top part filled in there. So I can now dip straight in white and use the edge of my brush to get some kind of feathery marks. The edge of the Filbert brush is great for feathers. You can also kind of dip the front in white. Have your brush mainly filled up with the yellow, and then dip the back of it in a little bit of raw umber. And we'll probably have to switch to the baby brush to get those last little details. Using the edge and a little bit of raw umber, make it a little extra dark in there. And if the paint's still wet, it's just going to kind of blend in as you go. And notice your brush strokes are going to follow the direction of the feathers, okay? So the feathers are going up and down. I'm not going to go in here and start doing horizontal brush strokes. So make sure your brush strokes follow the direction of the feathers. Okay, now I have these more rounded ones down here. So the ones that are in the middle, they kind of go straight down. And then the ones on the left are going to turn slightly out to the left, and the ones on the right are going to turn slightly out to the right. So I think first what I'm going to do, just to get the texture, is I'm going to mix together some burnt sienna and some raw umber. And I'm just going to start layering these. Get the texture in there, and there's a lot of different orders you could kind of do this in. So I'll show you a couple. So here's kind of dark to light. So adding the dark kind of shadow. And then I'll also get in there, kind of shade some of these guys in here. So I'm now grabbing some straight black and I'm going over the top right. These ones here, just to get them even a little bit darker. And then I can see it's a little darker down here, so shade that area a little bit. Right along the leg there. And now you can get in and clean your brush out. Leave your brush pretty damp. And we can get in there with these feathers again. Throw a little bit of white, a little bit of burnt sienna, a little bit of yellow. You can dip your brush kind of in all of them at the same time. And you can go right up to the edge of the shadow that you did before, but not quite completely going over it. Maybe some of them are going to be a little more lighter. And some are going to be a little bit darker. And you can see right here, some that are kind of going in towards the middle. And on some you can dip just one side of your brush in paint. And then we've got these feathers kind of hanging down below here. So let's start off first with just our yellow, white, and burnt sienna mixed together. And we're first going to go along the left edges of them with that. And the other thing you can do too, which I didn't mention, is you can actually spray your canvas. Especially with these feathers, we don't want it to dry too fast. And now there's even a touch of blue. So I'm just going to do a teeny tiny bit of blue. And I'm doing brush strokes that kind of head towards the middle there. Now I'm going to get in there with some darker. Now I really need to darken it up a little bit. So I'm going to wipe my brush off. Before I do, I'm going to go in and just soften this up a little bit. Down here on the bottom, you can kind of flick your brush downwards, get nice and fuzzy. Okay, so now I'm going to clean my brush out, and I'm really going to get in there with those shadows. So if you want more of a purpley shadow, you can take red, blue, and that's going to give you more of a purple look. I'm definitely going to add black into there. using the edge of my brush here. Again, darkening up this area that's closest to the chicken here. So top right, kind of brushing down. Now I'm going to move on to another one. We can always come back to this later. Darken up this area here. Okay. So for our next chicken, we're actually going to have some dark areas on the sides. So you can go ahead and use up any leftover paint you have there. So now these three chickens in the middle are a little bit lighter. So we can do all three of those together. So I'm going to clean my brush out. And we're going to take our white, yellow, and burnt sienna, but you want to make it just a little bit lighter. So I'm going to do these ones. They're going to be a little bit more pink. And then this one in the middle, I'm going to do a little more yellow. So I'm going back in and just darkening those up even just a little bit more. Adding in the shadow for that wing. fuzzy little dark feathers under the middle one there. And add a little shadow there. And then this little thing here in the back. And keep it kind of fuzzy because whatever's further away needs to be a little bit fuzzy. Okay, so now I'm going to go in and start filling these in. So I'm going to clean my brush out again. And we've got a lot of more white colored feathers here, especially on this one. And now is where I'm going to kind of start to get a little bit more crazy with my colors to get some nice kind of colorful little chickens. So I might even add a little blue into this one. So I'm flicking my brush and I'm following the direction of the head. I'm grabbing a little bit of burnt sienna. With my brush, grab a little bit of the cadmium yellow. Add a little bit of blue in there just to make it kind of pop. We've got some feathers that are kind of coming towards the center. Down here, so I'm using the edge of my brush and just kind of flicking in towards the middle. And now I'm going to load my brush up in white and I'm going to dip in a little bit of burnt sienna, or sorry, raw umber. Too much raw umber. And I'm going to start over on this side here. Get a little extra raw umber down here in the middle. Come down with a little bit of light over the tops, these dark areas on the side. Now I'm just kind of lightly feathering, getting a little bit more texture in here. We may do one more layer of white over this guy a little bit later. I'm going to darken up this area up here at the top under his little gizzard. Get that darker. And we're still going to do kind of feathers around the eyes. Okay, so now I'm going to come in with this one. So first I'm going to come in, use the edge of my brush, let's kind of shade this area down here. And I did not mean to completely cover this shadow here. Let's go over that again. Now I'm going to take my brush, nice damp brush, and I think I'd like a little bit of purple in this one. Do a little purple. So remember, the ones in the center are going to go face downwards. And then the ones on the side are going to go out a little bit. So just angle your brush out just a little. And then down here, they're going to start to kind of aim towards the middle. Now I'm going to use more white and yellow. I'll do shorter brush strokes up here, using the edge of my brush. And now I'm going to use a little bit more white. I'm going to make my brush kind of flat. Same things before, we're going to kind of go over these. I don't want too much yellow though, I want mainly white. While I have this white, I'm going to do a little extra white on this guy over here. I'm dip in just a little bit of that purple though too. And this is what's so fun about painting chickens or roosters, is they're just so colorful. And you can kind of really get free with it. So I'm going to go in again and make it a little bit darker down here. And you can notice I'm getting a lot looser, so I'm just kind of going for it. I'm not thinking too much about it. And not kind of holding on as tightly to my brush. Okay, so now we have this next little guy here. So I'm going to clean my brush out, and I'm going to do this one just mainly white. So I'm just going to clean my brush out, get some white paint. I don't want too much water in my brush. All Lots of short brush strokes, just kind of filling them in. Seems to be a very white area, kind of down the back. We're going to add some shadows there in just a second. So now I need a nice kind of neutral gray. So I'm going to take white and a little bit of red and a little bit of blue and a little bit of black. So in some areas, I think I want more of a light blue, like on this tail here. And then as I get down further, so I didn't mean to cover up the background that much. I'm just gonna knock that back just a little bit. Just use a Q-tip and just kind of touch that up. And now I'm holding my brush sideways and I'm doing brush strokes that are kind of just dipping down. And that's giving us a nice kind of little texture. And then the brush strokes here over on the right are kind of dragging down around the right. And then there's kind of a shadow on the back here. And a little shadow in here. We're going to grab a little bit of black. And get in there. Some may belong to this guy over here. And now without too much paint, I'm just going to define the head. So I'm using the edge of my brush and a little bit of gray here. Should just go around the head to create a little shadow, and that'll separate the head there from the body. Get a little extra dark down here in the chest area. And if it's too much, you can always go back in and knock it back with a little extra white. So I want just, I think, a few more feathery brush strokes right here, going out in this direction. Okay. Now we're going to do this body of this last one, and then we're going to do some feathery strokes around the head. So we're going to fill this one in. We'll use the same kind of mother color here. We're going to add a little bit more burnt sienna, a little more burnt umber. I'm going to even add a little bit of red to it. Okay. So we've got kind of a lot of wild colors on this one. So I'm making it just a little bit lighter on this tail here. And then I'm gonna make it a little more yellow and white coming out from the neck area. So I'm doing the edge of my brush and doing some kind of longer feather brush strokes there. I'll do the same thing down here at the feet. I'm going to wipe my brush and I'm going to get some of that darker color. It's going to be red and purple, sorry, red and blue for some purple, some black. Okay, so there's my foot. I'll go right along the edge of my foot here and go right up the side there. Grab a little bit of burnt sienna here. I'm gonna have some little brush strokes underneath there. And now we can start adding in the little shadows in the front. So if you have too much paint, you can clean your brush out a little bit. I'm gonna dip into the burnt sienna with a teeny bit of raw umber. Following the shape of the body, this one's kind of turned to the side, so the feathers are all kind of going off to the right. So then I got some shorter little brush strokes in here using the edge of my brush. We're definitely going to add some orange on this one. This one's ready to go to a party. So while I've got the burnt sienna, I'm going to come up to this tail here. Do two kind of coming down. I'm going to grab some of my gray color, come down from the top. I'm going to come over here, go in. And now we're going to add some white to this. So you can wipe your brush off. Grab a little bit of white. I'm gonna have a teeny bit of yellow in there first. So I'm taking white and I'm just kind of brushing over where we just did those kind of darker colors, and it's still wet, so it's just kind of blending right in. White, little burnt sienna, white, little burnt sienna, and my brush strokes are starting out and kind of going inwards. So right here, start out. Now I'm going to do some shorter brush strokes, kind of sticking out, kind of pointy. And now I'm going to add that orange in. So wipe my brush off on the side, take some red and yellow, And we're going to go over the tops of these with some kind of pointy orange. And we'll add a little bit of orange up here too. Even add a little orange to and then a little bit of white and burnt sienna again. And there's just a whole lot of color variation going on over here. So first I'm going to kind of drag my brush down. And then I'm going to get in there and just do a lot of streaks of color. So first I'll do a little white, a little burnt sienna, a little red. You don't want to brush over it too much or it'll just get muddy. Pick up some of my gray color. Add some feathery brush strokes down here, just kind of fill it in. A little bit of the white color up here. Wipe my brush off and I'm just going to feather this white in a little bit with that darker color. So a little white and then a little bit of the black again. And now we're going to go in and shade the faces just a little bit. So we're going to switch to the baby brush. And underneath, wherever the red is, you're going to have shadow there. So you can use black, you can use raw umber, you can use whatever you want and start very, very dark right underneath it. And then you can wipe your brush off on the side and kind of drag it down. But it's going to be darkest right underneath. I'm just seeing that I want these to kind of look like they're in front here. And the shadow is going to vary depending on how dark the feathers are. So you see these feathers are really light, so I don't want to go in with a super, super dark shade there. I'm going to lighten it up, little white, little yellow. Coming right underneath here. And then if you want to blend it in, take some water. It can help you blend it a little bit. And if any of your red areas got lost, you can go in again and paint that over the top. So on this face, I'm still missing some feathers up there along the top. So I'm going to take white and yellow. And I'm going to do some really crazy hairs, kind of coming up. And they're going to follow the shape of the eyes. They go back down. I'm actually going to take some of this red and yellow, some of this yellow and white, and I'm going to go in a very defined point. I'm going to go around the eye. So I'm going around the dark, so I'm not trying to cover up the dark from before, but I'm just adding a little bit of a highlight. And then around that is going to be more of the red area. If you lose some of your darkness around the eye, you can always go back in. You can go over the beaks again as well, if there's anything you lost there. For the most part, I think I'm just kind of dabbing little teeny feathers to give it a little texture. So dipping in the white and the yellow. Same thing over here. You definitely want to take a step back and look at it after you work on it for a little while and see what you're working with. Like this guy's kind of missing part of his head here. So white, yellow, little burnt sienna. He has a little shadow on the top of his beak here. That'll make it stand out just a little bit more. I'm going to take this kind of lighter color too. Go right around the eye. To make that stand out a little bit more. He's got kind of some white area in his little gizzard over here. Now we still have this one down here, and you can tell that he needs some more definition around the eye. So I'm going to take some light colored paint here. Kind of light tan color. Go around the dark with that. And then I'm going to add another layer of dark around that. So there's like kind of two little areas there, and then I'm going to take this down into the nose a little bit. And that's pretty much it. So you can step back, look at it from far away. You could go in and touch up any areas where the feathers kind of meet the background. If you wanted to blend that in a little bit, you could go over with just kind of a dirty brush. Down here by the feet. Brush over those with a dirty brush too, if you just wanted to knock them back a little bit. You could also add a white highlight. Just use the corner of my brush, drag up a little bit of white on some of them. So just going in the center of the feet. Adding a little white highlight. You can press over them if you want to knock it back a little bit. And that is it. So that's the last step. Don't forget to take a step back, look at it from far away. You're going to notice things you didn't see before. You could get even more colorful on this, even more abstract. So just take a step back, have a cup of tea, see what you think. And I want to thank you so much for painting with me today, and I'll see you next time.